Uromi 16 that were killed, gruesomely murdered. And we are now linking up with Eshoma Moimodu and TJ Suadeoye in our Abuja studio to continue that conversation. Good morning, guys. How are we doing this morning?
Good morning,
Veronica. Happy
We're doing well.
Great,
Happy new month.
great. All right, we can now continue the conversation.
All right. The next half hour of TVC Breakfast is reaching you live from our Abuja studio. Now, thanks everyone for staying with us. Now, the Edo State Governor Monday Okpebholo has paid a condolence visit to his counterpart in Kano State, Abba Yusuf, over the killing of 16 Kano-bound travelers last Friday. Governor Okpebholo arrived at the Kano State Government House at noon on Monday and was received by Governor Yusuf and other government officials. The visit is one of the many steps already initiated by the Edo State government to douse tension and build on existing peace and harmony between Edo people and their counterparts, brothers and sisters across Nigeria. Not just that, the Edo State government also announced the suspension of all illegal vigilante groups, including the commander of Edo State Security Corps.
In a move to further guarantee justice for the victims, the state government assures that investigations are ongoing and 14 persons have been arrested in connection to the gruesome murder in an Uromi community. Manhunt for others who took the laws into their hands is being intensified by a special team drafted by the Inspector General of Police. During the visit, Governor Abba Yusuf maintained that Kano State remains the most peaceful state in the north that accommodates people from diverse communities. Governor Yusuf appreciates his counterparts for the prompt visit and calls for immediate prosecution of those arrested for justice to be served. Both governors later called for peaceful coexistence as they visit Turunkawa village in the Bunkure local government area of Kano State. For more on this development and the need to avoid jungle justice in Nigeria, we have two gentlemen on the program today. Joining us via Zoom is the Managing Director of Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited, Kabir Adamu. It's good to have you on the program, Mr. Adamu. Well, while in the studio here, we have joining us the Secretary to the Edo State Government, Musa Ikhilor. Thank you for joining us on the TVC Breakfast Show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
good morning,
Nigerians.
Thank you.
Well, it's really a sad development in Edo State, and this paints a picture of the actual security situation in the state with concerns about, the increased attacks on farmers and also kidnapping. Some people say that it appears that government does not, has not done much to guarantee the safety of lives and property. Is that the actual situation?
Well, that is not the situation just now. We are barely 4 months in government, but we have made very tremendous stride as a government to address the security situation we inherited from the past administration. Things were very bad before we came. We had these illegal vigilantes operating. Before we came, just before the elections, they were suspended by the Inspector General of Police after they shot at a police officer at the airport and killed a policeman. This same vigilante, incidentally, we just discovered that the vigilantes that were operating in Uromi the day this happened are also from the crop of that vigilante during the last administration that we suspended. We began profiling and registering them so that we subject them to training under the Edo State Security Corps governance law. But it is very curious that for hundreds of years there has been, Uromi has been a gateway between the south and the north, and we have never had an incident like this. So for it to happen now is really just curious, and that's something every very intelligent security expert should ask. Talking about the state of insecurity, the government has been very proactive. The governor, the executive governor, purchased over 75 brand new Hiluxes for security agencies, distributed it to all of them. Before he came, he inherited rickety Siennas. That's what security agencies were using. Then he also purchased power motorcycles to chase, bandits out of the forest. And we're making tremendous progress. In Uromi, just a month ago, a traditional ruler was kidnapped. And within 48 hours, with the swift response of the security team put in by the governor, they were able to rescue the traditional ruler. And we were beginning to really push the bad guys out of the way. So, but we have a lot of distorted information out there, which is quite unfortunate because people sometimes play on this. For example, I have seen a video that even major TV stations were sharing of women protesting in Uromi about kidnappings and rape and all that. Now that video is suddenly being shared by the opposition in the state now that this is the state of Uromi. But if you were just to Google, the video is from 2021, right? It was from 2021 in the Obaseki administration where women went to the palace, government house to protest of too much kidnapping. So it's curious that that video is now being circulated just now when we had this carnage that everybody is supposed to unite on and condemn. But we know what the game is. You want to incite people and, ratchet up the tempo of the situation. But the governor, in his wisdom, has decided to choose the path of de-escalation. All right, and that's what we have done with our Kano visit. Okay,
talking about de-escalation, you just came back from the Kano visit with His Excellency the Governor. Now, talk to us. What are the basic achievements? Because we know the tension is high over there. Has been threat of reprisal attacks. So, what have you been able to achieve visiting Kano State?
In fact, it is unprecedented, unimaginable, the cataclysmic catastrophe that the governor averted by that visit. A lot of people will not understand. But if you are a true Nigerian and if you are a student of history and you have followed the dynamics of ethnic crisis in Nigeria, then you would appreciate, every right-thinking person will appreciate what the governor has done. Because even when we're in Kano, we had a meeting not just with the government and the people of Bunkure, the meeting with all tribal minorities in Kano, the Igbo communities, the Eze Ndigbo, the Yoruba, the different tribes, they were there appreciating what the Edo governor did. He said, you did not just come to pay condolence, you also saved our people here in Kano. And then the Edo indigenes in Kano, who are in millions. This migration thing is a fact of life. It has been there from beginning of history. Abraham was a migrant. Everybody has migrated. Moses migrated. So we have people from different parts of Nigeria living in other parts of Nigeria. So what the governor did was to immediately halt something that would have really been disastrous, because people were really just instigating that drum of war to see that there's a reprisal or whatever. But the governor has taken a path for de-escalation, and what he did is very commendable. It shows his leadership quality by being very proactive and has that emotional intelligence to read the situation very fast and acted very fast. Went to Kano State, did not just visit the government, went to the village after 2.5 hours of road trip to the very village where those 16 victims came from. Condole with the family and promised that justice will be done, reassured them, and also reassured that he will compensate the family who were innocently and gruesomely killed. And that has really de-escalated tension, and everyone is happy, and the reports are very positive. And every well-meaning Nigerian or leader in this country today is appreciating the executive governor for what he did.
Well, from reports available to the government, was this possibly a targeted attack or a revenge killings for previous atrocities committed by other criminal groups?
Well, I think that is something that the security agencies will have to unravel. There's actually suspicion that this may have been orchestrated for different reasons, because it's really strange. Like I say, if something has not happened for 100 years, and it happens for the first time, then there is a problem. You have to ask questions. What really went wrong? You know, it is not an excuse that, oh, because of the insecurity in Uromi. No, the government was actually addressing that insecurity. The reports are there. Let us not be deceived by what, certain non-state actors and enemies of states are trying to do using the social media propaganda, like I just mentioned, spreading old videos and making it look like it's happening now. That is not the case. So the DSS is asking questions. That is why we suspended the commander of the Edo Security, Corps, because the governor is very proactive and he doesn't want to leave any sacred cows on this matter. So that is what is happening.
Now, you do have huge security challenge on your hands in Edo State, and I hope that the governor understands this, because you have, apart from the issue of this unregistered vigilante you talked about that you inherited, you also have a lot of cult activities that's giving the state a lot of headache now. What exactly are you doing? Because today it's the vigilante, another day it might be the cult people unleashing mayhem on innocent Edo State people and residents. What are you putting in place to help solve this?
When we inaugurated, the very first week of inauguration, we had several court killings in Benin City. That is the state we met. In fact, we had a case where somebody who attended the inauguration had a flat tire, went to a popular place in Benin, James Ward, to change it. While he was standing, somebody was shot dead beside him. Court-related killing. But the governor acted very swiftly, called the different community leaders, the stakeholders, and even had an interaction with, youths who have access to some of these bad guys, and gave a clear warning, and then made the example of one or two, and then suddenly it all died down. And in December, we found unprecedented peace in Benin City. No court crisis for the first time ever. Even people testified to that. And then the governor enacted a new law, anti-cultism law, where there were stricter penalties for cultists and even the sponsors of cultists. 21 years imprisonment, you have your properties confiscated, demolished, and he has been executing that. Even the anti-kidnapping law that he also enacted, and he's implementing it. So it is not just rhetoric or political showmanship. It is action and practical governance that the governor is doing. And these results are there. The facts are there for anybody to see. We have been very proactive in stemming the tide of cultism, and then we are doing a lot even with the anti-kidnapping. We had an anti-kidnapping law where anyone caught harboring, sponsoring, or collaborating with bandits is going to face the full wrath of the law. We have their properties demolished, will be prosecuted, and that is already happening. So this is the state. This is what we are focused on doing. But of course, we understand that it's a tense political season. There are persons who think because there is a case in court, they need to create an atmosphere of tension and insecurity to influence public policy and stuff like that. But we are not distracted by that. We are very focused on what we are doing, and we are ignoring all sorts of propaganda.
It was still going to stay with the issue unraveling in Uromi, but that will be right after this short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Thank you for staying with us. It's still TVC Breakfast, and we are live in our Abuja studio. We're still discussing the killings in Uromi, and we still have with us in the studio the Secretary to the Edo State Government, Musa Ikhilor. Now, I would like to know, how is the government sensitizing the people against taking laws into their own hands? Because this is a clear mob justice. Also, the response of the government is closely being monitored at this time, as many people are calling for swift measures to prevent a reoccurrence of this kind of situation.
Of course, like you already know, immediately the governor heard about this. He left Abuja, where he was supposed to attend a meeting at the villa, 4 a.m. in the morning, went by road from Abuja to Uromi to reassure community leaders, engage with the various communities in Uromi, because Uromi is one of the most cosmopolitan cities in Edo State, having Hausas, Igbos, Yorubas all living together for hundreds of years now. So you see, 2,000 years of history cannot be written away or denied. So the fact that the people of Uromi have been very accommodating, and there is something we have to mention here that has not been within the media space. These travelers were 27 in number. Okay. Now, what happened to the remaining 11? We say 16 were killed. The people of Uromi saved 11. So while the bad guys, incinerated 16, good citizens of Uromi rushed and were able to rescue 11. 3 of them are in Irua Specialist Hospital. I was there a night before we traveled to Kano. They are receiving treatment. Then we made arrangement to transport the remaining ones to Kano. And we met some of them yesterday when we went to their local government. So people should also talk about the lives saved, not just the lives taken. Because like it is said in the Holy Book, he who kills a soul is like you have killed the whole of humanity. And he who saves a life is like saving the whole of humanity. So we need to commend the people of Uromi for saving that number of persons. And we are sensitizing more people and making sure that they do not fall prey to some of the incitement that persons who do not even live in Uromi are doing. A lot of these media incitements are orchestrated by players, and they know what they are doing. So we are trying as much as possible to put a counter narrative out there that we make people understand the imperative of peaceful coexistence, harmony, and cooperation, instead of the whole negative narrative that we have had out there.
Okay, quickly, I'd like you to just respond to this. 14 have been arrested. How far is the government willing to go to bring these 14 and others that are at large to justice? Because that is one way to reassure the public that politics will not be played.
Definitely. The governor has demonstrated that he will bring these people to justice. And now it is now beyond the state government. The federal government has come in. The Inspector General of Police has set up a special team headed by DIG Sadiq from Force Headquarters. So he's going to be collaborating. The DSS is on it. For example, the DSS is having the commandant in custody and several other persons who they have also picked up. About 2 persons, I learned, additional persons of interest were picked up by the Department of State Security. And they are revealing very useful information. So the government is very committed to see that this does not happen, because we know the implication. Because it has a ripple effect. If you start profiling everybody based on assumptions, we will all be finished in this country. It's just like what used to happen in the South, where every young man with a laptop, a jean and a t-shirt was branded as Yahoo, arrested, beaten. We can't tolerate that. So it is the same thing. So you can't just brand people as bandits or as kidnappers just because of the way they look, or the fact that perhaps you found them with a Dane gun without actually profiling. Do you have a license for this gun? What is your profession? Are you a hunter? Whatever. So these are questions that are very technical, that the security agencies responsible should be allowed to do their work on this, and not untrained persons that have constituted themselves to security agencies and not non-state actors.
Of course. Well, we have joining us now via Zoom Kabir Adamu. He is the Managing Director of Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. He's also a security expert. Thank you for joining us on the program this morning, Mr. Adamu.
My pleasure. Good morning.
Well, good morning to you. Well, jungle justice, or would I say mob justice, is a serious issue stemming from a perceived lack of faith in the country's legal system, which has led to, citizens taking laws into their own hand. This is not the first time that we have witnessed this kind of situation, but it's definitely a time to, nip this situation in the bud. Who should bear the responsibility for this?
Well, the government happen, and perhaps they would even make arrest, hand over to the security agencies, and then, the persons are either not prosecuted or in certain instances are even relieved, and then they will come back and, perpetrate the same criminality or even worse criminality than what they had done previously. There are several instances of that. And so because of that, the element of self-help has crept into our national security architecture. I doubt if there is any community today that you don't have some form of vigilante. I also doubt if there is any state in Nigeria out of the 36 states that do not have one or the other form of vigilante. This is a reflection, unfortunately, of the lack of trust, just like you've described, in our public security agencies. Now, the biggest challenge, I don't see the proliferation as a major issue. What is the issue is our lack of the ability that we've not had in the past to manage this proliferation. The law recognizes that these states, these local governments, these communities can create vigilantes, but they must come under some form of supervision by a federal security agency, in particular the police. So that supervision, I would say, has failed essentially. If we had done the right thing, they would have come under the community policing element. Their recruitment, their training, the knowledge of especially their power to arrest and never to judge would have been, supervised adequately. But today, a lot of them don't even understand that they don't have the power to prosecute, as it were. So they arrest, they detain, and in certain instances they prosecute, just like we're discussing in Uromi. In several parts of the Northwest, they do the same thing. And then if we discuss even their profile, the way they recruit, the way they train, the type of weapons they're given to them, how they handle those weapons, the fact that there is no armory for those weapons. So these are all the challenges that, unfortunately, the three arms of government, the executive, the legislature, have to an extent failed to manage properly. By now, the element or the issue of decentralization of security would have been addressed in our country, but we are yet to do that. The reality is that as at now, we only recognize federal security agencies. Any other security outside that federal agency, as far as the Constitution is concerned, is illegal. I know the argument would be, well, state legislatures have backed some of these creations, but the reality is that the federal Constitution only recognizes those federal security agencies. So as a country, the legislature would need to come to terms with that reality and say, this is the direction that we should go. We've left it undecided at the moment.
Okay, Mr. Adamu, talking about the legislature coming in to look at our books. Now, we used to have a system where we have traditional rulers in place, and like what happened in Uromi, for instance, if such suspected people were arrested, why didn't they take them to the traditional rulers? Was it that we have lost confidence in our traditional rulers, that they cannot handle issues, that people will not take to jungle justice, even if you don't have confidence in the police? How about taking them to the traditional rulers? So how do we bring back our traditional rulers, talking about the new face of security, of policing in Nigeria, so that we'll also have them play their own traditional role in helping to secure our communities?
Earlier on, your colleague referred to the failure of the legal system. And so, there is the whole range of legal systems, if I'll describe it as that, which includes the traditional legal system. And I think we've come to a time in Nigeria where the entire system, both the formal one and the informal one, have to a large extent failed. And there are so many reasons for that. The reality is that it has failed. And so there is a current conversation within the National Assembly to give some element of authority to our traditional rulers. Whether that would solve this challenge or not, unfortunately, only time would tell. There are several other systems too that we used to have in place for addressing dispute as a country that were not necessarily the formal system like the court. Also, those systems have failed clearly if people resort to jungle justice of the most barbaric manner. And I think this is the element that a lot of people don't understand, the use of fire to met out justice, especially in the Muslim world, is something that is totally not acceptable and not condemnable. Perhaps if it were other forms, maybe the type of sentiments that you are seeing would not form. But fire, as far as the Muslim world is concerned, is a no-go area completely, and that was what was used in this instance. So it has evoked some sentiments that we're seeing at the moment. But thank God, and I must commend the governor of Edo State for the steps he has taken, and several other...
Now, Mr. Adamu, are you still with us?
Lost that connection.
All right. Now, you heard all what Mr. Adamu said. Do you agree with some of his submissions?
Of course, these are conversations that, are emanating right now. The place of vigilante and other state security architectures. And this is a reality that we have to, live with, and we have to really discuss about. I think there was a conference the last time of security chiefs organized by the Office of the National Security Advisor, where incidentally the Director General of the DSS was emphasizing that if we must make a headway, we have to come back to that reality, that we need community policing. Because security is every man's business. It's not a matter that the federal government alone can handle. And that is why, whether we like it or not, state governments are involved heavily in security. Because even the police still have to be funded by state governors. State governors buy vehicles for police. They give them all the equipment, all the support. You have security votes. So this is something that we have to find a way to now institutionalize and operationalize. But to pay lip service to it and say, oh, only the police, we are really just burying our head in the sand like the ostrich, and that we not benefit anybody. But like he said, again, there are questions of separating the criminals, the bad guys from the good guys, and not lumping everybody together. This issue of generalization, assumptions, profiling based on biases and sentiments and other primordial emotions, it's very dangerous. We can't continue to promote that narrative. Otherwise, everybody will be in trouble.
Exactly.
Because everybody will be profiled. There is something each person can be profiled for. Anybody can say, oh, you are Yahoo or you are Ole. And somebody will put a tire on you and light you up. Anywhere in the country. So we need to be very careful and separate, persons who are involved in legitimate business from the criminals. We admit that there are criminals who are using the cover of legitimate professions to perpetrate crime. But we need to be able to call them criminals, whether they are from any tribe A, B, or C. We'll call them criminals and deal with them, but not to profile based on ethnic identities or religious identities and lump everybody together. That is a dangerous narrative that every right-thinking Nigerian must address and dissuade.
Okay. Are you also thinking, as a state, escalating it to the level of your geopolitical zone, for instance? Because this challenge is not peculiar to Edo State. These men that were murdered left Port Harcourt, for instance, and they must have passed through several communities before they got to Uromi and they met their untimely death. I'm talking about a security network. So that it will not just be, Edo is doing its own, another state is doing its own, because if you succeed in driving them away from your state, they will go to another state. But you have that network. So you're thinking of bringing it so that it will be more solid in the South-South geopolitical zone?
Yeah, definitely there is that collaboration. Already we have forums, like the governors have their forums, like the Nigerian Governors Forum. Then you have the South-South Governors Forum. You have the Southwest Governors Forum. Just like that, the North-Central and the Northwest. So at the South-South Governors Forum, this is a discussion that is ongoing. I know the Southwest governors also have that discussion because it's a collaborative thing and we are all together. For example, in Edo State, we from intelligence, we realized that a lot of these bandits who are trying to come into the state were being pushed from our neighboring states.
Exactly.
So when they get fire from Kogi State, for example, they move through the borders into Auchi and other areas. When they get pushed from Ondo State, they come in through the other side of the state, or via and other parts. So what we are also doing is not just to push them, but to collaborate with our neighboring states, that these persons are operating here, then we push them out, they go. So if the states are able to collaborate, then they do a coordinated operation so that any of these states become uncomfortable for the bad guys and they are pushed out entirely to somewhere else, outside the country, or they will have to submit. If every state is able to adopt a coordinated strategy of ensuring that they do not create a safe haven for these bad guys, then we will be making progress. Definitely.
All right. Mr. Adamu, I hear you're back with us now. In Nigeria, the Firearms Act prohibits the possession, sale, and use of certain firearms, which includes the Dane guns, without a valid license. Now, these hunters were allegedly in possession of weapons that are prohibited. Now, this brings to question the issue of the proliferation of arms in the country. I know you mentioned that earlier, not being a major issue, but let's consider that issue right now.
Yeah, it's a major challenge in the country, proliferation of small arms and light weapons. And the current administration has moved and created a center for small arms and light weapons. We would have wished that the center was a commission and not a center. As a center, it is now domiciled under the Office of the National Security Advisor. If it was a commission, it would be independent. It would have the full powers and authority to carry out its functions. But now it's limited by a lot of restrictions serving under that office. Having said that, the center has created 6 regional offices. It is being supported by all the security arms, about 28, 29 of them. So the police would sometimes make arrest, hand over those weapons to the center. The military would do the same thing. The customs, immigration, name them, they would do the same thing. But that's just a little drop in the ocean. The proliferation of weapons has reached such an extent that we need to do more than what we're doing at the moment. Again, having said that, it is unclear whether those hunters had licenses or not. Unfortunately, they are late, so it will be a little bit almost impossible to determine whether they had licenses or not. The issue is that a lot of hunters in Nigeria have operated, sadly, without even realizing that they need licenses for the weapons. So the element of advocacy and awareness to certain groups and elements within the country, including the hunting groups, is, I think, a very important work that this National Center for Small Arms and Light Weapons would need to do, so that every Nigerian, irrespective of what profession he's doing, realizes that as long as he has a weapon, and that weapon falls under the category of small arms and light weapons, he or she would need a license for that. But you're right, the challenge is huge and we must address it.
All right, I would like to take a follow-up to that. From all the information that you've gathered about the remote and immediate causes of this avoidable incident, at what point should the police and other security agencies be blamed for this terrible act?
I mean, a significant portion of the blame should go to the public security departments. In criminology, you
want to speak on that?
Light weapons. I think I would like to say something about the possession of firearms. There are professions that licenses, firearms. The police licenses firearms for some professions. Let me say something a bit about the hunters. The hunters have an association. They call them the Hunters and Forest Security Council. They even have a bill now that is trying to institutionalize that, association in the National Assembly. And I think it has passed third reading. and it's a concurrent bill between the Senate and the House of Representatives. That bill is meant to, institutionalize and give a regulatory framework to the profession, which is very interesting. I think I would encourage most people to do some bit of research on this. I just found out that, there is a system of itinerant hunters, people who live one location, because that question has been coming up. What did they go all the way to Port Harcourt to do? But when I went to Kano yesterday, I understand why it might be difficult for you to hunt in Kano, because it's a savanna plain. It's a Sahel region. There are no trees, no forests. So it's about economics, and it's about greener pasture. The same reason that takes a professional from Nigeria to the UK is the same reason that would take a farmer. They are actually migrant farmers, migrant fishermen, and migrant hunters. This is there. We read these things in book. So this, what we heard when we interviewed, preliminary interview of some of the survivors, they claimed that they had license for those firearms because they were Dingons. And they've been doing this business for years. But that is something that the security agencies would definitely have to verify.
All right. We must thank you so much for your contributions on the program today. It's a fine place to leave it. Musa Ikhilor, it was nice talking to you. Ikhilor. Sorry about that. And Kabir Adamu, we must thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning. It was a delight speaking with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The pleasure is mine.
Pleasure.
Well, that's all we can offer today from Abuja. We'll hand you over back to Lagos, where Veronica is standing by with the rest of the crew.
All right, thank you, TJ.